Hey guys, happy, you'll see this on Sunday. So this is another senior moment, and since we had all three generations together, we thought that we had done this once before where Ryan and I just kind of had a conversation with Dad and about things that he's done in his past that maybe you guys aren't aware of, and so we're just gonna have a conversation.
So I guess this is a senior moment, and it's going to be a kind of my recollection of things that transpired in the past based on the question these guys have. So we'll start off with Ryan. What you got a question for your old grandpa?
Dad had said, I knew that you had worked with Remington. It was Remington or Winchester?
Yeah, Remington Arms Company.
You worked with Remington, you were a machinist, but Dad told me yesterday that you were a commodities broker?
Yeah, I had offices. I worked out of an office in San Francisco in the Fox Plaza, and I was a commodity options broker. Commodities are traded on the Chicago Board of Exchange, and they're like, we dealt in international commodities that are not controlled by the Mercantile Board in Chicago. And that means that can be coffee, it can be orange juice, it can be soybeans, anything that's traded internationally that is not controlled by the U.S. government is an international commodity. And that's what I worked for a company that traded options in those different commodities like coffee and silver and orange juice,
Soybeans, I think.
soybeans, yeah.
Pork bellies.
No, pork bellies are not an internationally traded commodity.
See, I was
Pork
thinking that
bellies
they
are
were
pretty
in-
much controlled by the price of pork in the U.S.
Okay.
So, and pork belly is, it's called pork bellies, but it's nothing but a slab of bacon. That's
Yeah.
all a pork belly is. But international commodities is what we traded, and we only traded options on them. We didn't trade the commodity itself. So if somebody thought that a commodity was going to increase in price, they could buy an option on 1,000 units of that. The option would be maybe 1/10 of 1% of the total value. And then if they were right, if they bought the option and it cost them $150 and they were right and the price went up, then once the price went up to where it was more than the $150 they spent on the option, then they could exercise that option and collect the difference in the money. It's just, most people don't realize that you don't have to own something or possess something in order to sell it. The stock market, for instance, if people don't know about the stock market, you can buy stocks and you can sell stocks, and you can sell stocks without owning them. Your only obligation is if you sell 100 shares of Tesla, at some point in time, you have to either deliver those shares or buy them back. So if you sell 100 shares of Tesla and it goes up, you have to make the difference. And that's not an option. That's buying and selling. That's long and short on the on the stock market. Whereas an option, you're only obligated for the amount you pay for the option. That's the most you can lose. If you pay $100 for an option on 10,000 ounces of silver, the most you can lose is that $100, because the option is for a period of time. And once it expires, it's no good. It's gone. So if you don't exercise an option, if it doesn't get into the profit or loss, because you can also have an option where you can sell a commodity without owning it. And if you're right, the price drops to where you recover the price of the option, and then you're in a profit position, you can exercise the option and take the difference in the price. So it's mildly complicated, but it's not really that complicated.
So the period of time that you were doing this, because I know there are a lot of people that watch that they know that you were a machinist for a lot of time.
I was a machinist for a lot of years.
And you started the business, the sign business, but there was a period of time, we recollect it was like 6 or 8 months. That's when you were doing the commodity broker thing?
Yes, I left. I was a machinist for Spreckles in Manteca, and I took a leave of absence when your older brother, when Bruce and his mother were injured in an accident, and I took a leave of absence. And a few weeks later, when it was time for me to go back to work, I went back and somebody had stolen all my tools. And so I had a couple of options. I could either go out and spend a few $1,000s for new tools, or I could find something else to do. And so I looked into different things, and I just accidentally come across this guy that was advertising for trainees for commodity options broker. And I thought, well, that sounds interesting. So I drove to San Francisco and interviewed this guy, or this guy interviewed me, and I decided to give that a try. I kind of liked that idea. The company he worked for was called Puts and Calls, and they dealt strictly with commodity options. And not to give you a long, sad story, but the company that the two guys that founded Puts and Calls gave their word that when somebody bought an option through their company, they would take that option money and go to the market and actually cover that with an option, a legitimate option on the market. Well, it turned out in the long run that that's not what they were doing. They were taking all that money that people were paying them for options, of which a lot of their customers were mine and other brokers. They were taking that money and playing around with it. One of them had a lot of property down in South America and Brazil, and so it was in fact a scam. But the brokers, the people who worked for it, didn't know it. We made our commissions. We got paid.
Because they needed you to keep doing what you did.
To continue to bring customers in.
Yeah.
Like that Bernie Madoff thing where it was a Ponzi scheme, but it wasn't supposed to be. It was supposed to be when somebody came to me and they wanted an option on silver, 10,000 ounces of silver. An option might cost $140. Either to buy it or to sell it, either one. And so they would pay me the $140, and of course the company would get the $140. And they were supposed to take that $140, and because they were brokers, they were in fact members of the commodity options board. They could discount, they could buy that same option at a discount. And their profit was supposed to be the difference between those two.
Right.
But they weren't.
They wanted it all.
They weren't doing that. They wanted it all.
They wanted it all.
Well, and the final upshot was, the way it ended, is that the Attorney General of California found out what these guys were doing, and since Puts and Calls was a California corporation, he shut them down. Literally shut them down. And all of the monies that they had in California banks was confiscated. And of course the brokers, the people that worked for them, we didn't have to pay anything back because we had earned the commissions, and we already had the commissions. But a lot of the people that had options lost some of their money. But the government, the California government, recovered enough of it so they lost maybe 10% of their options money. The rest of it was recovered. But puts and calls was also national, and there was a lot of options buyers and sellers that didn't realize anything. And in my particular case, I had a lot of the commissions that I earned, I put into options on silver. And this was back in the 70s when silver went from $4 an ounce to $40 an ounce. And I had options on thousands of ounces of silver. I would have had about $1,800,000 in profit if the company had been legitimate. They weren't.
Yeah.
So I lost part of what I earned as commissions. If everything had been right, I would have been a millionaire, but it wasn't right. And once it was shut down, then I moved on to something else.
And that's when you...
That's actually when I started the sign business in the winter of 1970, because in late 78 or 79 is when I was in options. And
68 or 69.
68 or 69.
Right, yeah.
And I made a little money. I had a separate account in with Kipnis Commodities in San Francisco. And I made a little money in soybeans. I made a few $1,000s in soybeans because I took some of the money I had and invested it in soybeans directly as a futures market rather than options.
Yeah.
And I made a little money in soybeans. So overall, my playing around as an options broker and a commodities speculator, I probably a little bit more than broke even, but not much. I mean, a few $1,000s. But the time I put into it was, what I learned was well worth what I spent. So,
well, there you go, folks. There's a short story for you.
Yeah, that's a senior moment that happened before I was a senior. And from there on, of course, I started the sign business. I decided I had to either go back to work as a machinist or do something else. And I think you've heard the story about, I was at a flea market. I saw somebody carving a sign, and I thought I can do that. And so I went back home and bought a router and some wood, found out I could do that.
Yeah.
And that's how the whole thing started. And I built the sign business up to the point that it is now. And Ryan does it, Eric does it, and it's part of the family business. As you all know, it's part of the family business. And that all started because somebody stole my tools. If they hadn't stolen my tools, I'd probably still be a machinist, sort of in a cane walking around a machine shop somewhere.
Yeah, and if those brokers hadn't stole basically $1.8 million from you, we probably never would have started the sign business either.
That's true.
We would have been...
If Puts and Calls had been a legitimate company, I would have taken that $1.8 million and probably run it into more, but at least I would have retired with $1.8 million. But I have no regrets. Everything I've done in my life has turned out well. I have no regrets at all. I just
well, I regret $1.8 million would have been.
Well, there's things that I've done that I probably should have and could have and would have done different had I known how it was going to turn out. But everything I've done is something that's led to be what I am today, with the memories that I have and the experiences that I have. So I have a few regrets, but like Elvis said in his song, he said, I've had a few regrets, but too few to mention.
Yeah.
And I've lived them. I've lived through them, and I just treasure every day that I've lived and every experience that I've had. But having these two guys is the greatest experience of all.
Well, thank you, Dad.
Thanks, Grandpa.
Appreciate that. All right, guys, that is it. I think...
no more questions?
No, we can't, next time.
Oh, okay.
Next time.
All right,
Okay.
well, we'll have another one of these. If you like something that I've shared, let us know. And if
Yeah.
you kind of like what we do on these questions and answers, I'll give you more of my experiences of stuff that happened when I was growing up, and even stuff that happened when I was little. Like I can remember back when I was 3 and 4 years old, a lot of the things that I did that kids can't do nowadays because it's just not the things that I did then were available, but they're not available today. Like things that happened during World War II and things that happened even way back before that. I was born in '34, and when I can remember clearly when I was like 3 and 4 years old, I can remember clearly things that we did as a family, things that happened, and how my mom and dad had to make a living at the end of the Depression, before the war. I can remember all that clear as if it was yesterday. Sometimes clearer. But so if you're interested in hearing about any of those things that help build what we've got here, let me know and I'll try to share more of them. But in the meantime, that's it for this time.
Thanks, guys.
Bye, guys.
We'll see you on the next one. Bye.